Hey everybody, welcome into the Lettermen Lounge. It is a Monday. It is Lettermen Live. It is brought to you by Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint, and it's going to be one of the best shows of the year. I can guarantee it because we've got a spring game to break down. Spring camp now over for the Buckeyes. 15 workouts in the bank. Head straight into the summer program, but we've got to break down everything we saw in the Horseshoe on Saturday. You know it was a big day because Jay-Z was in the building.
I was in the building. It was a big day. I even went down to the field.
He was all over.
Talked into it.
So did Bobby.
Taking notes, talking shop. Yeah. That's Justin Zwick.
I love it.
Nicole Cox, Bobby Carpenter, Spencer Holbrook. I'm Austin Ward. And I mean, Jay-Z was just getting out.
Well, I got to see these guys in their natural habitat.
It was a scary sight.
Sitting there with computers in front of them and writing notes down.
You guys ever going to invite me? Ever?
Nicole, you control everything down there.
No. You can get into that place easier than I can.
No.
That's for sure.
Maybe not as easy as me. Definitely not as easy as Bob. No. But you got to be third in the power rankings. Definitely ahead of Jay-Z.
Yeah, exactly.
Bob, what did you learn down there at field level?
I learned that a lot of players came back.
Did they? When did that happen? I was down there at halftime.
Corey Lindsley showed up at like 10 a.m.
Did he really?
Did he?
He was one of the first people there. Berm and I were down there in Spencer.
What was he doing?
He was just like wandering around. He had his kids and his wife.
Awesome.
And I'm like, why are you here so early? What are you doing?
I wish I would have got there a little earlier. Because we ended up we'd go heading to the game. This is the first year I didn't have like any obligations surrounding it. So I'm like, all right, it starts at 12. We'll get down there at 11:30. Oh, lane was brutal. I did a U-turn on the bridge, went back, and I just straight up parked at the Woody Hayes. I'm like, not a word out of you guys. We're walking it. It's going to be about a mile, but this way we won't miss much of the game as opposed to getting down there and nothing being available. Yeah. So we walked around, but I was amazed. Like we came in, saw Cam Hayward. I haven't probably seen him in 5 years. He's a
monster.
He is a ridiculously large human being. Like, it's unbelievable how big he is, like strong and just physical and the nicest guy in the world. But the fact that he came back, KJ Hill was there, you had Fields back. I mean, there was a lot, obviously Archie, a bunch of older guys. It was a good group. Malave was there. Like my kids were running around. Michael Jordan, the greatest, he was there too. So
Teddy Ginn,
Teddy
walked by.
Teddy was there.
Paris Campbell, Raekwon McMillan.
Yeah, all those guys. And some of those guys were there, even earlier this week and stopping out at practice. So it was awesome, I think, for recruiting to see that many guys. And then a lot of the guys went over to the Woody Hayes afterwards, and they had a great little barbecue set up where current players, their families, alumni, their families. And I just think that that's important to have. Like you talk about, the family and every school wants to talk about like their alumni and their connectivity and all these things. But it was pretty awesome to kind of see that and to see the recruits walking through there and like talking to all the different people and just. There's a lot of people there that had played, and some of the kids had no idea who they were, but the parents did, which is kind of crazy. So I'm falling into that category now. But it was pretty great, and it was a lot of fun, and I thought that they handled it really well. The weather was nice, not great, but relative
got
to
better as the day went on.
Relative to today, it was. Yes. I mean, it was awesome. Yeah. It didn't rain, and it wasn't freezing, and it wasn't like overly windy. And then the play on the field I thought was pretty good. I mean, generally. And I think people look at it, it was very encouraging. We saw quarterback play defensively, and then, Nicole, whenever you guys can start detailing some of the other guys. But I think you look at that defense, like, okay, the defense looks better. The offense is pretty good. Defensively, they look better, especially some of those young guys. Jack Sawyer being one who I'm thinking Paris Johnson's a pretty good left tackle, and I'm hoping that he's going to continue to be. And Jack Sawyer did some really good stuff against him, so we'll kind of see how that develops through training camp.
I talked about him last week and just how
her sources were.
Yeah, my sources, they're great. But he, because he came out like last spring game was when he really had the chance to shine, I guess, and. Just after the Rose Bowl and everything, I'm so glad that he looked so good for this game. It was exciting to see.
Yeah, he did. He and JT Tuimoloau, it didn't matter. I mean, some of those matchups were borderline unfair with a banged-up offensive line.
Most of the matchups, I went back and watched it with Jack. Like, a lot of the pressures he had were on the first-team offensive line. And that's why – because the drop between, like, the first-team O-line and the second team was fairly significant.
Quite, yes. And they were missing pieces.
And so that's why if you looked at it, they tried to rotate them. And that's what I'm saying. There's injuries and guys that are out. So they tried to keep it, like, first-team D-line in with the first O-line, because if not, it was 1-2 sack, and there was no time to do anything.
You said you watched that with Jack, or you were just watching Jack?
No, I was watching Jack.
Okay.
I thought I caught the with Jack.
We've got Bobby just breaking down film with Jack Sawyer, Nicole
I'd watch it with me if I asked.
working on the endorsement deal to get Jack in the Pickerington location, popping out there and making.
And I was going to give him my Buckeye leaf, so we were just all Jack Sawyer today.
That's great. I love it. He deserves it.
Jay-Z, what did you make?
Well, to Bobby's point about Lane being packed, it's great to see a lot of fans out. For the start of the day, cold, rainy, didn't look like maybe we'd, get that big of a crowd. I think 60's respectable for the weather and how it was, but it's great to see everybody out. And then it was just, last year was a lot about the quarterbacks. This year we know who we have at the quarterback. Now it was good to watch the younger guys. I thought McCord looked pretty comfortable in the pocket. Some real small little things that he was able to do, moving around the pocket, stepping into throws. So that was nice to see because you never know if you're going to need that guy or not. But it seems that he is still progressing the way we think he will. CJ, I thought, pressed a little bit. Wasn't perfect, wasn't what we thought. Throwing some low balls, some here and there, but it is what it is. This is a spring game. I'm not going to worry about that whatsoever.
You can't always have a perfect
no,
game.
well, no, but we just got so used to it. It's the standard, Nicole.
Nope.
Oh boy!
Don't get me started.
There we go.
From both sides.
Let's get her started.
No, but but I mean, it went as you think it's going to go. The guys, with our receiver group, I think the offense was going to score some points and do some fun things, and a new defense. It'll probably look way different come season, of course, when they're blitzing and doing some different things, which they didn't do a lot of on Saturday, if at all.
I'm pretty sure they didn't blitz one.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's going to be different, right? And so that's kind of hard to tell, but it was encouraging. It seemed like they were flying around and knew where they were supposed to be, and that's big coming out of spring that they kind of have the new philosophy down and can get out there and play fast.
I want to see how Nicole handles this, where it almost never happens for Ryan Day to have a second-year starting quarterback. We don't have to compare C.J. Stroud to Justin Fields anymore, but we can compare him to a year ago. So that standard is the standard, right?
It is, definitely. I agree with that. And it'll be interesting to see if he's going to have any sort of non-perfect game or a little bit off. This was the game. So I think
that's
it's fine.
right, yeah.
And I'm not even saying,
leave it in the spring. Don't bring that to the season.
I'm not even saying that's how he was, but I don't know. I was just so impressed with him last year, and I can't. And, I actually had a question for you guys about this. So we were talking about the pressure and everything, a couple shows ago, and just the pressure that was on him and what he had to overcome and the things fans say, So can you be a people pleaser and play collegiate and professional football? And I know I'm kind of switching subject, but I feel like this is a very, very important.
Well, I'll let these guys think about their answer for that, but I will say that the way C.J. Stroud has handled the off-field responsibilities going through this the second time, and we'd already made reference to Student Appreciation Day and Pro Day, and
Which
then
I love.
Yeah, exactly, and taking it even one step further with paying tribute to Dwayne Haskins and wearing that jersey on Saturday. C.J. Stroud is doing all the things that you would want from a face of the program, and I wrote about this a little bit on Monday, and will again moving forward. The amount of attention, not pressure, attention and the spotlight is going to be on him is only going to get enhanced over the summer and the closer that the season gets, because there are going to be more opportunities available to him.
Natural attention enhancement.
That's natural attention enhancement, and it's a product of time and growth. So all those things combined, I mean, national card shows are going to be wanting C.J. Stroud to fly out and offering him tens of thousands of dollars. Endorsement deals, he's already got those. He signed another one with Express over the weekend. That stuff is all going to continue to.
That's a good deal.
To add to
Express,
your plate, the clothing.
That's awesome.
I know. I was like, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I like that.
Express for men, Express for dudes.
It's for dudes. For high level dudes. So all that stuff, last year was learning how to be the quarterback for the first time, and that's its own challenge.
In the shadow.
And having to be Justin Fields.
It's gonna be me.
It's gonna be May soon.
It's going to be May.
And all that.
It's gonna be May.
So now this is the second thing, the second year, the second challenge. He's become a superstar, and now you have to learn how to live life that way.
It is, and the expectations that come with that. Like, that's why I think the second year starter, it's critical to have to go through that. This whole off season of like, hey, wasn't perfect in the spring game. We expect you to be that. Why? Because you were pretty darn good last year, handling all those expectations, understanding that. I think it's been some good work that he's gotten in against this defense, though, and I think it's really helped him improve. Just seeing the different looks. working in with some of these new receivers. I thought they were pretty impressive. I thought the defensive backs did a really good job, challenging a lot of the throws. And I think that was part of the reason why CJ, and all the quarterbacks, they looked good at points, but there were no guys that were just running wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One of the other things I think that was pretty exciting, well, Nicole asked about the people pleaser, sorry, as I diverted off that.
I digress.
I digressed off of that. The people pleasing thing, I think you can, Nicole, but you have to develop a pretty thick skin.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't have ears to hear everything, and that's the problem.
It would be brutal.
It is, and so for people who like positive affirmations, and if they're not getting those, will do everything they can to get them. There are going to be people that just don't like you. I know, Nicole, that you have anxiety right now thinking about the people in the world.
I'm already thinking about
who don't like you.
We need to know everybody's love language. If they like the words of affirmation.
Do you know there's people that don't like you?
Probably. And
Does
I
that
don't
bother
like to think about it, and I want to try to make it better.
No matter what you do, though, they still might not like you. That's the problem.
But once and then yes, that's at that point when you're like, okay, that's.
But once you get there, you get pulled in so many different directions that you don't even worry about the ones that are talking smack or talking crap about you or don't like you, because you can do so many good things, so many positive different charities. Like, I'm going to take my people pleasing to this charity, or I'm going to take it to this hospital. I'm going to do so many different things where you don't even. I mean, that's so far back, or you at least try and leave it so far back that you don't pay attention to it or hear it. You're just trying to pay it forward, as our old coach
it's just
put onto us.
It would just be
From
very
an older
difficult. I just think of that. It's a very difficult position to be in, especially if you're like a words of affirmations person, and they probably should turn off their social media, and because it would be like a punch to the gut, like hearing he should have done this better, and maybe you can grow from that as well, but I just feel sometimes the words that are used to describe how they play in a game, they already feel bad enough about themselves. You know?
There's an old proverb that I once ran across in the winner's manual, Nicole. You may have
the winner's manual?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You may have 99 people that will tell you that you can't do something, and maybe only one that will tell you can. Do not be discouraged by the many, but inspired by the one.
Obviously.
Well,
Preach.
it's easy to say that, but when there's 99 people that tell you suck at what you're doing, it's a lot harder.
You got to really hang on to that one.
You don't take criticism from someone that you wouldn't accept advice from.
Absolutely.
There you go. There's, oh man, we're dropping knowledge.
CJ is interesting because at one point last year he said, "I'm not a running back." And
it's awesome.
Which is also correct.
That was him,
correct.
That was him hearing all the noise and responding to it, and trying to make everybody realize that, hey, he's a quarterback. He doesn't have to run the ball. And then he just stopped saying things like that and locked in. And I think that's when the leadership started to pick up. That's when he really started to take off. That's when he and Jackson Smith and Jigba started hooking up for 200 yards, and he was throwing ridiculous passes all over the field. He was doing that stuff before, but you could always tell there was a little bit of looking back over his shoulder, not at another quarterback, but at an entire fan base. And once he stopped...
At the ghost of Justin Fields.
Sure. But once he stopped doing those kind of things...
Once you stop seeing ghosts.
Yeah, once you stop...
Then you can live life.
You stop looking over that shoulder. I mean, there's a lot that you can get accomplished.
And it's the confidence, so it's like building the confidence level up.
Exactly.
That is real. I mean, it's not just the guys that are behind you. It's the guys who have played before you.
The standard?
The standard. And you're looking at guys like, okay, well, Justin Fields, great thrower, could run the ball as well. You look at J.T. Barrett, Braxton Miller, Troy Smith. I mean, all these different guys that we have had here at Ohio State, there's always been a requisite level of athleticism. Like, I feel like I'm trying to think that of Ohio State, they've had a guy who's just been a pure statue. I mean, even Beckman, his clunky.
Dwayne went through the exact same scenario in 2018.
But you watched him pull it down when he needed to, and he'd pick up yards.
But that was my biggest problem with that in the middle of last year, was how many times did CJ actually have to do that? Yes. I mean, it wasn't necessary, and I don't think that it will be in many situations.
Listen, I'm not going to say Tom Brady doesn't run it very much, but when he does, he makes it count, and that's all you get. That's all it is. The spot shot of.
I think maybe that's why CJ kept it one time on Saturday. It's like,
I saw that. And that was amazing.
Because I'm like, what the hell are you doing?
Game action. The first time we saw him, he ran for a 20-yard touchdown or something.
Had a touchdown,
right? So he can do it. He just knows he doesn't have to, and he wants to sit there and throw the ball and let his playmakers make the plays.
Because those guys are a lot more dangerous with the football in their hands, to be honest. And we saw some of that on Saturday, didn't we, Nicole, with some guys who earned some Roosters Buckeye leaves.
Yes. You know what? I Gosh, I have to pick just one.
No, you don't have to.
Okay, good. It was just because it's an interesting game. You're watching. They're all Ohio State players.
Yeah.
So I think, I was anxious to see Emeka Egbuka, which he did. He had a few catches, which was great. Evan Pryor had the touchdown, which was nice to see. So some things that we didn't get to see last year.
Right.
And then Kai Stokes, the safety, who is a true
Learn
freshman.
the name.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. That's my point with that. He just did not look like a true freshman.
No.
He looked great.
That's 3 off the board, Jay-Z.
Yeah.
Good luck.
That's what stood out in my mind.
3.
That's
I feel like I can talk or kind of give one to Evan Pryor since I called out last week.
Yeah.
Guys I was looking forward to seeing. So to him,
you were standing in the press box patting yourself on the back about Mayan Williams looking good.
Well, yes, but we know what he can do. We saw he started.
He is.
last year.
He's so great.
Yes,
He is.
and he is great. Now he looks like he's a little slimmer right now.
I think it's just the number.
Is that what it is?
No, that number
You put
3
on
looks
put on
terrible.
3
It's
makes
just-
it's a slimming effect.
And then,
I'm gonna
then
start
all the
wearing
red
number
he
3.
had on. I mean, it was just there was a lot going on there. But I thought Evan Pryor showed some nice flashes of his speed, of his athletic ability. I think it's great to have somebody there. One, you can root for him because he seems like a great kid, right? You hear him talk about, I don't want to leave. I don't want to go to the port. I want to be here. I want to compete. That's easy to get behind somebody like that. And then he goes out and shows what he's able to do. You don't know how many of those guys you're going to need throughout a season. We saw last year, you get little bangs here and there. You need some guys to fill in. I think he could be somebody that will give us a big lift here at some point throughout the season when needed. I'm going to give another one to Josh Proctor just for being out there. I know he wasn't able to go out and hit and do a lot of stuff, but breaking a leg, being out there in the spring, I think that was important for him to get in there and be with the guys with this new coaching staff coming in and just learning and being on the field. So, big ups to him for getting out there and playing in a spring game when he probably could have said, I
Don't need to, yeah.
I don't really want to go out and play and risk another injury, but he was there and doing it.
Oh, he really wanted
playing well.
He wanted to play. And so,
Well.
he got a little practice in and looked good. I was really impressed with Proctor, his ability to move and see stuff. There's a couple of different positions that I looked at. I thought the young defensive backs, Jordan Hancock looked really good. Obviously, Denzel Burke played well. J.K. Johnson had some plays too. There were some moments for him. So you look at those guys, you throw Cam Brown and they're like, okay, you've got a pretty nice little mix.
Yeah.
And then the one position group that is always forgotten at Ohio State, never really gets the love. Now, your guy, Tim May, always likes to give him the love. And it's better to have a tight end than a loose end. Always remember that. But if you look at what Joe...
2 tight ends are better than 1 tight end.
Absolutely. And you look at what Joe Royer was able to do and G. Scott, Joe Royer's catch was nice now.
Really
it was really impressive, and G. Scott was available in the middle of the field. Both of those guys looked very competent. They looked physically put together, like they'll be able to do some blocking. I thought they did a pretty decent job of that as well. And so you kind of smash all that together with Cade Stover and okay, you've got a pretty nice little package that I think that you'll see deployed this year. And they ran a lot of 2 tight ends as well in the second half.
Yeah, nice little package for the tight ends.
Absolutely. And opposite of the tight ends was a freshman defensive end that I have been talking about for a long time. I talked about him during his recruiting process.
You did? Wait, are you trying to just...
As the person
Are you just
in
trying to
this
be
chair.
Berm over here?
As the person in this chair, I feel like I can take responsibility. But Caden Curry...
The powerful
He
chair.
looked good.
Caden Curry looks good. And it was going against Grant Tutani. He was going against a couple walk-ons at offensive tackle. But you have to give him credit for what he was able to accomplish in his spring game debut. We've heard his name a couple times in the spring overall. I think he's had a nice push here in the last 6 weeks to try to cement himself in, maybe not into the 2 deep because that's such a deep room, but you need another guy that you get an injury and you need another guy. Caden Curry's right there, and I think he could have an impact on this roster. So I thought he looked really good. I'm going to give him a Buckeye lead because I think the future is really, really bright for him.
I wish that, Bob, you need to sit down with Tommy Eichenberg and explain to him that he should just embrace being a more vocal presence.
Just a quiet dude.
Because he's going to be
Him
a
and Steele.
staple.
The problem is him and Steele are both mutes. That's the issue.
And that's not good for me.
I told
It's
Steele
not good for a linebacker.
So how am
You're-
I supposed to just sit here and keep talking about Tommy Eichenberg and Steel Chambers if they won't say
Nothing
anything at
from
all?
them.
How am I supposed to write about these guys when they won't? I'm just trying to get better every day. That's all you got, Tommy? I know you're a good guy. I know that you can say more in the locker room. And I went through that. It's not a goal to be as mute as Tough Borland. A 3-year captain who refuses to say anything. Yeah, the standard is the standard.
Yeah, the standard is the standard.
Tommy, don't
That's what
do
they
that,
came up
okay?
under.
Like, don't do that.
Like, you said too many words at the press yesterday.
He doesn't care about the attention.
He doesn't.
He's not working to get name, image, and likeness deals. He just wants to go out and rip people's head off. And I respect that.
I do too.
But I would like to be able to just have a little bit more conversation. Like, Tough Borland, when I turned off a recorder, would be a very different person. And we got to get this mentality of the middle linebackers, these guys that don't want to say anything. Like,
AJ didn't used to talk at all.
Oh, now get a word in with you and Schlegel.
Somehow you and Schlegs and AJ are all able to sit in front of a microphone for 3 hours a day now. Well, how did that happen?
I don't know.
It's like a game. Stop.
I mean, AJ was quiet. I'll give Bob that.
He's really opened up as he's gotten older. I'm surprised at
his personality on the field is exactly like what you were just saying. He
didn't talk
wasn't
trash.
he didn't want to be the highlight. He didn't care about the glory, being glorified. He just was there to play football and do a job because he loved it.
Yeah, it's
be a good PR person for AJ.
AJ used to.
He doesn't need it. Tommy, I can.
No, I've seen it. I respect it.
I know.
It's
AJ used to not say a word, and now he's fighting Pat McAfee for a microphone.
Oh yeah, you go through that evolution, but it was awesome. One of the cool things, like at the little tailgate afterwards, I got a chance to talk to Cam Martinez's dad. It was awesome, bringing up Berm and his love. I mean, he kind of worries.
The love affair?
He worries
about Berm. Like he has to check his phone.
Check that phone every night.
Make sure some weirdness wasn't being texted back and forth from Berm to Martinez. But getting a chance to meet these.
Well, he's still got like one of those apps on the phone for his kid. Like,
Oh,
who are
yeah.
you texting?
Absolutely.
Stop texting Berm.
Exactly.
Same old man every time he looks at it. Who is this guy?
But
He sends pictures of you.
it was amazing. Exactly. It was amazing getting a chance to meet. Like I met JT's mom. Got a chance to talk to her. Talk to Steele's dad. Like a lot of these guys, and for guys who aren't necessarily around the program all the time, and that maybe went there, and I'm like, I wish I could say there's not really any bad guys on the team. Like, and I go, when you meet their families.
But you were saying you wish there was because you needed a wild
You
card.
need a wild card. I think Jack Stover has, Kate Stover, and I think Jack might have it in him too. I'm trying to find. I think Cam Brown has a shank ability to him.
Well, Cade doesn't, because I talked to him about this a while ago.
He would do it.
He promised his mom that he wouldn't fight anybody when he got to college. So
But that means
Does that mean on campus or on the field?
I don't know. He could be a wild card, but he promised his mom that he wouldn't.
if you made the promise that you wouldn't be that guy, that means they know that the guy
he's
exists.
in there. Yeah, he's deep down inside.
Like, that's something you'd have to promise. Like Schlegs, we're not going to get in a fight.
Like Frank the Tank, it comes out.
You can't.
At the wrong time.
But that's Cam Brown. But like these guys, like they're all great kids. I'm talking to JT's mom. And, they flew in, and he got his hair all twisted up for the game. I'm like, dude, when did you get that dunk? Friday at practice, he didn't have it. And he's like, when he got in, his mom looked over, and she's like, I'm the one that did that. I'm like, after you flew in from Washington, how long? He's like, 2 hours. I'm like, exactly. And he's like, feeling bad. I'm like, you made your mom, after flying across the country all day, to sit there and twist your hair up for 2 hours just for the stinking spring game?
That's probably why he did media on Saturday. So he could go
Yeah,
show
he's
it
looking
off.
good.
Exactly.
It looked nice. I was like,
It did look great, but like that's the guy. Like they're families. They're elite families, families, and that because of that, you end up having great kids.
and great players.
They're great players. They care about each other. They
Triple
play really
threat.
hard. It's really nice to see, and so it's awesome to kind of get to meet some of those people. I met meeting Hickman's dad last year. Like all these different guys, they're awesome. They're huge fans of the show, by the way.
It says so much about the program too. It says
does.
so much about the program that there aren't that. I mean, there's just a handful of people in the world that have the talent plus the great, just great morals and great philosophies and that care about others, So when you get like the full package, and for us to have that many players that are like that, that's huge.
Oh, it's the talent and the grace that comes with it. I mean, there's one of these guys that are just super egocentric guys, and you see that in the receiving room where they're all really good, and they get it. And so it's like, hey, you recruit. And Ryan, I mean, I give him a lot of credit. They're like, you know what? We don't need to go bring in guys. That's why everyone's like, well, they could have had Elias Ricks in the transfer portal. He's elite DB from LSU. It's like, but is that the guy you want? Wouldn't you rather have Jordan Hancock and J.K. Johnson develop, and find ways to get those guys on the field more? And then that's why it's great. Like the Tanner McAllister came in, has really fit in really, really well because he's another really high-quality guy, plays really hard, and that's when you begin to have really special teams, is when you begin to see those bonds because everybody cares about each other. Because you don't have any bad dudes that you just don't really like.
they want to
playing
work
with.
together.
Yeah.
It's all coming together for them. It's just spring. There's a long way to go. And a busy summer at Roosters coming up.
Yes.
What are you working
Mini
on,
corn
Nicole?
dogs.
Ooh, mini corn
Mini
dogs.
corn dogs tomorrow, $2 off. Which
What
is
a
great.
$2 off. No, only $2.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
only
$2.
Get the
Guys.
marketing right, Nicole.
My goodness, what's going
Appetizer
on?
Tuesday is what it's
$2.
called.
It's yes.
What am I
The
thinking?
Tuesday
Yeah.
$2
Dollar app.
Tuesday.
Make you a
Yeah.
holler
I love it.
for the corn dogs.
Yeah.
Make
and
you
then
I'm glad that you don't use the hashtag with the number 2 in place of Tuesday, because I don't think people would search for that. Appetizer Tuesday is just with the actual
Delicious.
much easier for me.
and we have the draft next week. NFL
Yes.
draft
It's
next
the draft
week.
next week. Wow.
Yeah.
I know. I thought it was this
They
week,
really
so I'm
kicked it
glad
down the
we have
road.
another
The end of
week.
April.
Yeah.
It's going to be late. Prepare Thursday night. Bengals drafting all the way at the back, Nicole. So I'm
Gosh,
sure
that's,
the Roosters locations. It'll be if you're working. It's not going to be like 10 o'clock clear out time.
Or I mean, you could call the catering.
Oh
They
yeah,
could whip something up for you
bring the chips.
a Thursday night, and they might just have some chips down there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They do have chips in the catering
Can only get it
division.
from
Check the
catering.
website. Only catering.
Catering.
Yep.
Gotta put that order
Why are
in.
you looking over there?
You got to put that order in.
Because one of our amazing team members brought some chips. For Jay-Z.
Amazing team
Wow.
members.
And
We like to take care of
Amazing.
people.
a catering
Yes.
order for Jay-Z.
It's my
Bob-
lucky day.
Little
Bob-
surprise. It's because he shaved the mustache.
That's it. That's a reward.
Yep.
He's
I'm growing it back. I'm going to
He's-
shave it again next
Nope.
week.
He's
We're not going
resetting
to create these
expectations.
situations. We're just never going to have it again.
So the coaches clinic, which also had Roosters on Thursday night, that was like one of the great days of the year for me.
It's
to go
so
get some
nice of
education.
them to like want us to be there. We've done it
oh,
for
the coaches
years,
love
and
it.
Oh,
we-
gosh, yeah.
it's just so nice.
Bob had his barbecue on Saturday. Spencer got to break down football on Saturday. Jay-Z gets chips on a Monday.
I mean, yeah.
This is the best time of year
You guys
at
are
Roosters,
the sweetest.
This
Thank
is-
you guys.
which is a fun casual
day.
joint. Nicole is going to go about her day. We're going to take a quick break here on Lettermen Live. We're going to come back to talk a lot more about the Ohio State Buckeyes. It's Roosters. It's a fun casual joint.
Everybody knows that Roosters is a fun, casual joint, but the truth is, it is so much more. It's a quick stop on the way home to sit back and unwind. It's a front row seat to the big game. It's a place where you will always find a friendly face, and the home of wings so big you won't believe it. It's your family's other dinner table. So yeah, we're a lot of things to a lot of people. Roosters, a fun, casual joint.
Precision engineering, rigorous attention to detail. A Bryant Evolution heating system is so well designed, it's as much of a joy to install as it is to use.
Good to go.
For the dealer nearest you, visit Bryant.com.
All right, welcome back into Roosters. It's Lettermen Live. It is the second half of the show. We're going to dive even more into the spring game before getting bogged down with the offseason and the long slog ahead. Ohio State does have its eye on that opener in September, though. I think that's, Bob, Jay-Z, a big reason why we saw some of the live hitting on Saturday. Don't waste an opportunity to go out there and get better.
Dudes banging on dudes.
Dudes banging dudes.
That's what we're looking at out there. And I love Ryan when he talked about that. Like, why tackling this year? Like, hey, we need to increase the element of toughness.
Be better at it.
Oh yeah, be better at it. Like that. That's
There's
real.
a lot of things we can gain from doing this, even though there's that chance of an injury or whatnot. But
They did have one
but it is
Saturday.
football. I mean, it is what it is.
And the thing is, the mountain injury, like you would have had that regardless of whether or not you were tackling.
Yeah.
It wasn't a tackling related injury. Everyone always looks at that. And it's like, just be smart. Don't try to hurt your teammates. And things always are going to happen. You can't prevent it all. But how many of those injuries are actually during a tackling event? Maybe you get a guy who's like, and this is where be a good teammate and get an early whistle. You get a dude who gets his legs wrapped up. Like, I understand we're playing hard and playing through the whistle, but you don't need to run over there. And
You don't need to clean that up.
Clean your dude up.
Yeah, exactly.
Save that for Saturdays against somebody else.
Yeah.
And so just learn how to practice with your teammates and practice smart. And I thought those guys did a really good job. But Ryan talking and touching on the fact that, hey, we need to get a little tougher. Like, we were tough some games last year, but not in all of them. And I think that that's important. He emphasized that because he didn't want to look like he's putting his head in the sand like, hey, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't need to tackle now. They do it enough, and they played. They,
Were you worried, Coach, about toughness? What are you talking about? Like, and be like, brace, like he watched the Michigan game the same as everybody else did.
Yeah.
I bet I think it's a safe bet. He's probably watched it more than anybody else. Yeah. And so he has eyes. He understands what he saw out there, and he knows that, hey, we've got to up this a little bit, and we can't up it if we're just out here patty caking around. We've got to tackle a little bit, create some live situations, especially for some of our younger guys who maybe aren't fully established, and let them go.
And I think if you were to ask some of the guys who have been here for a couple of years, that toughness aspect of things probably started 6 a.m.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You know, I mean, so that was this year was probably, that's the word, of the Woody.
Yeah.
Toughness. This is what happened at the end of last year. You know, I mean, instead of up north where they had, what have you done to do? Like, this is what we have to do. This is, if we want to be in that championship game, we want to be in the Big Ten championship, we got to be tougher throughout the season. And I think that just is an end of, this time of year. Hey, we've been tough all year. We did what we needed to do. And he probably is very happy at where they're sitting right now.
Well, and you think about it, they've got some elite third-year players. Look at Jackson Smith and Jigba. To this point, he has not beaten Michigan. If something happens, the thought that a guy could go
That's
through
interesting.
3 years,
we had
didn't play him.
years after years after years. A guy was winning 4 in a row. Yeah.
So I'm saying, so the thought that could transpire and you could play 3 years and never get that done, I think they kind of drove that home. If you're in your third year, you've never beat these guys. Okay?
Yeah,
and so
you have no gold pin.
Even if you're a fourth year, you did your freshman year, very few of those guys are elite contributors at that point in time. And so those are real things that they talk about, and to make sure they just don't pass these things out. You got to go get it.
The fact that everybody missed that opportunity in 2020, because what was going to happen in Michigan on that day was not just going to be a massacre. It was going to change the entire tenor of the rivalry moving forward, because there's no way that Jim Harbaugh would have survived.
Not have been fired.
So, Jackson Smith and Jigba would have got some gold pants. CJ Stroud would have got some gold pants. That's about as close to a guarantee as you're ever going to find. And Jim Harbaugh survives, and then you go through last year, and it doesn't happen. And I think there's a lot of other parts that are involved there when we're talking about this toughness, and it extends to the coaching staff, because they're looking at the inexperience and first year and name, image, and likeness in the transfer portal. And I think if you ask those guys and they were being truthful about it, they were too hands off. The coaching staff was a year ago, and part of that you may think you have to because it's the first time going through some of these situations, but they weren't. You look and complain that the leadership didn't step up or that they didn't develop guys to take that step forward in the big house the way they wanted to. Well, everybody is involved in that, and so. Ryan Day says we're going to hit and I want to see something, or the mat drills are going to be different than they were before. If you're Mickey Marotti on down the line, everybody has to take some ownership in that. It wasn't just the inexperienced players. There were a lot of things that happened building up to that game and others that were not the responsibility of the players. And Ryan Day's going through some of these things even now into year 4, the start of year 4, and he's putting his stamp on it and hiring these coaches and doing this and that. He's still had to go through some growing pains of his own that don't just happen in one day.
The first-year head coach. It's been there. This is his 4th year. It's crazy to think that it's gone, honestly, that fast.
Yeah, no kidding.
This will be at the conclusion of this season, he will have been halfway into the tenure of Urban Meyer, who was here 7 years. Yep. And so it goes quick. It's wild to think about that. So it'll be his 5th season here, 4th full as a head coach. And so, it's a growing experience for him that I think he would even talk about and understanding, hey, you don't know what you don't know about being a head coach until you ultimately get it. You think you know, and the other people can tell you, but until you literally experience these things for yourselves, and handling of the success is sometimes as difficult as handling of the failure. And then on top of that, he's dumped into the name, image, and likeness and transfer portal world where no one knows anything about anything.
Well, and when he first took over, there's a lot of guys left over from an old staff that maybe weren't, necessarily guys that he wanted to keep around or this or that. And, he needed to get out and prove himself. And now he's able to make those changes that he wanted to. Or maybe not that he wanted to right away, but you understand. Getting, guys that he's more comfortable with in and on his staff. And, that's change is good.
So
we'll find out.
Doc Tressel used to always say, you got to make a change. And it's starting with the man in the mirror.
Man in the mirror.
Okay.
Doc Tressel came up with that on his own?
I think he ripped it off MJ.
He may have.
But that's a big key. That's a critical element and component of it. And so, for once in your life. And so maybe take a look in the mirror, make that change.
That That's
Keep
right.
going.
Spencer, you were ready?
Yeah, he's got me all. He's got me talking.
You can grab
doesn't
Bob
matter.
Sal while you're-
Yeah, Bob Sal.
You're black or white.
But one of the things I noticed about Ryan Day last year, and I think in hindsight, it's a
Just
little
one?
It's a little, just one. Here's just one. It's a little easier to look back on in hindsight. Is the leadership of last year? All the seniors were freshmen before Ryan Day was here, but he was here, but they weren't. They were freshmen when he was, just an offensive coordinator. And to have guys, you're the head coach, and to expect those seniors, and I'm not saying that they didn't buy into anything that he said.
It's a different process.
Yes.
It is a different process, and that's what I think I'm trying to get at now. All of these guys, the fourth-year guys, have been under Ryan Day the entire time. And so I think the leadership
Dudes
is
under
only,
dudes.
It's only going to continue to strengthen the leadership as his culture builds and as he continues to completely not wash out what Urban Meyer did. I don't want to say that at all, but like to
Establish himself as the head coach.
Absolutely. And it's interesting to me that some of those guys who were called on to be leaders last year didn't respond the way that you would expect Ohio State leaders to really respond at times. And I wonder if that, not coming in under Ryan Day and having a couple years to buy in but not fully being ingrained in it had anything to do with it.
It's had a lot to do with it. Like my dad always talked to me about, I would ask him about his relationship with Bill Parcells, and they were always really close. And he goes, I knew Bill when he was just the linebackers coach. He's like, so then he became the head coach my second year. He goes, so when you know somebody as an assistant, it's a little bit different. Like,
well, I'm gonna push back on this.
Push it real good.
This notion that the leadership wasn't fully bought in, or
bought in isn't the wrong.
I understand that maybe that's not the right word or what Spencer's going for, but are we going to say that Thayer Munford wasn't a great leader after spending all that amount of time with Ryan Day, or that Haskell Garrett wasn't a great leader after the time that he'd spent there, or Chris freaking Olave? I mean, I'm not buying that. There wasn't enough support around them, and you could say that the productivity from someone who was a captain like Taraja Mitchell or Zach Harrison wasn't what they wanted it to be. But I don't think they were in a position, and that's why I bring up the coaching staff as part of this. It's not the amount of time, or the pieces didn't fit. The way they managed the entire roster, Greg Studraw was asking Thayer Munford to play a guard, and Paris Johnson is out of position. Like, I don't think they were responsible for that.
Should they have asked? Should those ask him?
What are they supposed to do? So I'm not. I think there's a lot more blame to go around for the coaching staff than these players, and I don't think that they were pushing back. I mean, maybe Thayer Munford was, but he said they needed him to play guard, and he volunteered to do that. Yeah. That's a selfless leader. Taraja Mitchell was pushed out of the starting lineup. Did he enter the transfer portal? 2 other guys did, but he didn't, and he's still around. I think there were a lot of issues, and I don't think that was one of them.
Yeah, that's a good argument. I mean,
the perfect storm of so many factors that went into it, and the bottom line is the change is happening. Like this spring, it's pretty easy to see. I'm sure, I don't want to speak for him, but we have seen a lot of things just look different.
Is that the Woody? I thought it was toughness is the Woody word. Are you saying it's going to change?
I only threw that out there.
I'm seeing.
I don't know that for a fact.
I'm seeing a lot of change.
I hope we don't have a word.
The change.
No.
The transition.
Fight.
The transition.
Fight.
I like that.
Fight. That's all we hear.
Fight on.
Fight. Tough.
Is that what they?
That's my point. Like, I don't think that the love was tough last year. I think you look at last year, and it wasn't a failure that they only won 10 games and then they won a Rose Bowl. I
heard Ryan Day say in it post game,
losing to Michigan is a failure. I know that
your goal. You're expected to win every game at Ohio State.
That's correct. But I don't think a
Nicole
rational
doesn't want to hear that.
Evaluation of that is that like it's extremely difficult to do that. And the national champions last year didn't do that. And the last time Ohio State won a national championship.
What about the champions of the West?
Well, look, we can have a different conversation about that. Like, not every team is going to win every game.
What if you were born on third base? Is it easier to steal home?
Well, look, that part in needling Ryan Day is part of this point of.
Oh, that was directed at Ryan Day?
Yeah, it sure was.
Oh, I didn't know.
You didn't know? Yeah, oh, yeah.
So that's the renewed urgency that I think wasn't here for Ohio State last year. And that can include everyone inside the Woody. Like, I think that some things slipped, but I don't think it was a problem of, like, guys not wanting it.
On this end with the coaching staff, do you think it had anything to do with maybe how hard it maybe was for 7 years prior to Ryan taking over, and then the coaches are like, "Oh man, this is so much easier."
There was a correction to that.
Do you think the coaching? Because from what you're saying, it's like the coaching put them in bad positions. You don't think they got enough from their coaches, which I'm not going to argue with you on. But do you think there's anything for those coaches saying, "Man, we don't"? Things are different around here. It's a little bit easier for me to come to work.
Well, I think there were other complications that I think are important to keep in mind. Like, obviously, they wanted something different on defense, or else Kerry Combs and Matt Barnes and Al Washington would still be around. Yeah, so they made 3 changes there, and Greg Studrawa was gone. That's also for a reason. And I don't think any of those guys specifically are bad coaches or forgot what they knew about football. I think all of them were dealing with an inexperienced roster, coming off of COVID restrictions where they lost a ton of development time.
Yeah.
And I think after COVID, as you go from 2020 to 2021, you say, man, these guys gave so much and it was so hard, and we asked them to do things that were insane. They took like 3 weeks off after the season that they never would have before. You'd go straight into mat drills, and you might have 1 week of that, not 3. And I think they were trying to figure out how to manage something that never had occurred in human history.
Yeah, I mean, you got that is one big part that plays a big part in this whole thing in the first 3 years of Ryan Day's tenure.
And so we can
had COVID.
We can say in hindsight, yeah, they made decisions. They weren't that tough love wasn't as tough as it was in the past, and they let some things slide that maybe they shouldn't have, and it caught up with them in 2 of the biggest games of the season.
Yeah,
and they paid the price for that. But again, Ryan Day's was not going to go undefeated for his entire tenure. Urban Meyer didn't. You lose games.
Yep.
That happens when you're coaching 18 to 21-year-olds. But if you're trying to manage that the best, then you try to get a learning lesson from that. And I think Ryan Day did, because he made hard decisions. Tackling in the spring game is maybe not a hard decision. Letting go and parting ways with 4 coaches, that's a hard decision. Yes. And he made it. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see in September.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first thing we got to see this year, everybody combined, it looked good, right? I mean, everybody, I think, would come away from the spring game saying the defense looked like they were running around fast, would have been making plays, did make plays. And then, of course, the offense is just, it is what it is. There's so much.
We both mentioned before the spring game that spring games are kind of glorified 7-on-7s. But the fun thing about the spring game was that it didn't feel like a glorified 7-on-7.
They ran the ball.
They ran the ball. They hit. They were physical. And it wasn't just, even when they said live tackling, I was like, okay, they're going to thud most of the time. Sometimes they'll take it. No, this was tackling. And so all of the things we just talked about lead into the big changes, and a little change that can kind of set the tone for the summer could be tackling in the spring. That's not a hard decision, like you said, but it can be a tone-setting moment for the program moving forward.
It's a hard decision if someone gets hurt.
Yeah.
Then you look like
you're right.
Getting tackled, and then all of a sudden the question rises, like, why are you choosing tackle? I mean, there's always stuff that can be second-guessed. Austin, your covering of Ryan Day, do you think you've seen a substantive change in him with how he handles things, how he handles the media over the last 3.5 years?
Not as significant as I would have expected. I've a few times in my career have been around at the start of someone's tenure and can certainly notice how quickly the access changes or the mentality changes after 2 or 3 years, and the paranoia sinks in, or they get tired of the media engagements. Ryan Day is doing, if you ask him to do something, he's still ready to do that. Extra opportunities, talking after a pro day, being out there at a coach's clinic and maybe grabbing a cup or 2 of beer with the high school coaches. He's doing all the things that I have seen him do since he arrived as an offensive coordinator. Now, the pressure to do that is going to wear out anybody. And I think that he has been in a situation that is far more challenging than, even though we all know it here and everybody who's watching it knows everything he went through from COVID that we all lived through. It's been one challenge after another with the rule changes, with transfer portal, with name, image, and likeness. And I think anybody would struggle with that. But he has a way of processing and compartmentalizing that I am very impressed by.
He moves in mysterious ways?
I don't think it's mysterious. I think it's purposeful.
I like that.
And I think that Ohio State still has the right guy for that. And I only bring up the challenges of the year ago and saying that it's not something that I wouldn't say to him or haven't said. They had things last year that happened that they just didn't know how to respond to them. and they caught them all off guard, and they all accumulated, as we said, in one performance that none of us are ever going to forget about. But the one person, as you said, when you're talking about watching that film, who it means the most to and who he knows has to get it fixed, he does.
Yeah.
He's not making excuses for what happened, and he could. There are a lot of them available. There was some weird stuff that happened on the 2 or 3 days before the game last year, from sickness to other things that will make a great story someday once Ohio State gets it fixed. And probably, I think they're going to win a national championship this year, and that'll be part of that story later on. But I don't think that his confidence is shaken based on that. I think it's stronger than it ever has been. And the fact that he made the moves that he did this offseason reflect that to me.
A lot of people have brought up the illnesses and stuff before the Michigan game. I haven't heard that very much from Ryan. He said it a couple times just in passing, but like he's not going out there, every time it gets brought up, like, well, we were sick, well, this. But there are people who have said that quite a few times, and Ryan mentioned it, made sure that people knew that it was going on, but also like he's not using it, like he said. Like,
Did you think about forfeiting the game?
No, I don't think that ever crossed his mind.
They weren't trying to get sick like a different program a year before. That was very different.
I was just making sure.
This took a very different turn for the second half of the show than I expected, and not even in one of our traditional weird ways.
No, yeah.
But
It's different.
I think it's a good conversation to have.
It was a different conversation that you've been around him a lot. I mean, just trying to figure out. I mean, people change. Like you said, there's a certain element. You say change, become jaded with the job.
Yeah, and
he has yet to really do that, at least from what I've seen. He has been the same guy. And I think that, honestly, the element of him coaching in the NFL, I think, helps that more than it probably other coaches, because you have to be like that all the time. You can't change. And so you have to be able to handle things and roll a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, that's why he'll be getting a new contract that will be announced soon with a lot of additional benefits attached to that.
Couple zeros.
Stay tuned for that.
Appearances on Lettermen Row.
Hey, we didn't give him the contract. Gene Smith did, but I would definitely sign him up for one if he wants to start. He can already get. Nicole brings Roosters directly down to the Woody. He doesn't
have to come up here.
He doesn't have to come down.
We'd have to move our corner.
And he gets
down
chips
to the Woody
whenever he wants.
Of course.
You can come get mini corn dogs tomorrow at every Roosters location for $2. Don't miss that. We're going to be back here, as we always will be, next Monday for Lettermen Live with Justin Zwick, Bobby Carpenter, Spencer Holbrook, Nicole Cox. Thank you again for having us. I am just Austin Ward. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week at Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint.